Hello students, my name is Rochan Chandra. I am an MPhil candidate in the Department of Criminology, Raksha Shakti University, Ahmedabad, India. Today I'll be talking to you on online child grooming. To begin with, let me give you a brief introductory description of what is child grooming. Grooming is a process by which a perpetrator befriends and establishes an emotional connection with the child and sometimes the family to lower the child's inhibition with the object of sexual abuse. With respect to the spatiotemporal differences, grooming can be distinguished into two types: offline grooming and online grooming. Before discussing on online grooming against children, this module begins with a small presentation on the concept of offline grooming. Grooming in the offline context generally arises in the intrafamilial and extrafamilial settings. Here the offenders are either the sources within the family who is entrusted with the well-being and safety of the children, or someone who is previously unknown to the children or their family. Amongst the typical characteristics of offline grooming, the physical proximity of the targeted victim, that is children, possession of implicit trust, and frequent access to the potential victim offers a favorable opportunity for the child sex offender to entice and emotionally seduce the children and young people. A section of scholars argue that offline grooming is very inclusive in nature. It is especially true because offender may desensitize the victim to sexual conduct by normalizing the sexually harmful behavior. In doing so, they may use a wide array of normal and routine patterns of interactions, activities and behavior which allow them to maintain a conspiracy of silence and keep the children in victimized situation for a longer period of time. Online grooming, on the other side of the spectrum, is a newer form of victimization against children. The use of cyberspace in this form of victimization allows the offender to pursue the naive children for sexual encounters, either online or offline. While online grooming is popularly used in reference to sexual abuse of children through internet, it is believed to be a negative outcome of the frequent use of mobile phones, social networking sites, instant messengers, emails, bulletin boards, etc. by current techno-savvy generation who wish to communicate with their friends and improve their social circle in an inexpensive manner. More so, the sophisticated and high-tech modus operandi adopted by the predators provides them an edge over traditional groomers. For example, lesser time may be required to groom the children online. There is barely any limitations in form of time or accessibility to children on internet. The groomer may manipulate the children to send the photos of their bare private parts, nude body through webcam, mobile phones, computers, and perform cybersex. Furthermore, it is important to note that online grooming may lead to both online or offline abuse. This is fairly possible because integration of internet and social networking sites into the personal lives of children has significantly increased their risk to come in contact with adults having inappropriate interest towards children. Similarly, the great deal of anonymity that the medium of cyberspace affords the predators also compels one to think if victims of online grooming could possibly attribute the commission of wrong against them on any specific individual with certainty. In that sense, it seems reasonable to say that the use of technology without proper netiquette is just as dangerous as allowing the children to roam on streets unsupervised. Now let's see how grooming is different online. Online grooming is a fundamental extension of offline grooming in which sex offenders resort to high-tech modus operandi over traditional methodical efforts to commit sexual offense against children. In other words, online grooming exemplifies the victimization experienced in cyberspace whereas offline grooming refers to the victimization experienced face to face. But this explanation presents a general contrast between the two modes, online and offline, which however omits the overlapping in victimization that usually arises due to transition of victims and offender from cyberspace to physical space and vice versa. For example, online groomers, after winning the victim's trust, might encourage or persuade the victim to meet face to face for the purpose of sexual encounter. Likewise, predators in physical space may move to cyberspace in order to develop rapport and sexual liaison with the victim after having met them in family or social activities. In that sense, it seems safe to say that online groomers widely use internet and communication technologies as a means of befriending and achieving the trust of the child, which may culminate in sexual abuse either online or transcend to offline world. As mentioned earlier, there is a marked difference in modus operandi employed by the predators in both online and offline versions to sexually victimize the children. However, this variation in modus operandi due to spatial differences also brings some changes in behavior and action of the offenders, as noted by Jaishankar in his space transition theory. Space transition theory explains the causation of crime in cyberspace with reference to movement of the persons from physical space to cyberspace. However, we believe that his propositions can be used in parallel to understand the dynamics of victimization in cyberspace too. For example, the second postulates of space transition theory recognizes that cyberspace affords offenders to mask their real personality and assume a new avatar of false identity, thus providing them with necessary means to commit crimes. Here, if we examine this feature of online grooming from Jaishankar's viewpoint, it can be easily noticed that online groomers typically conceal their real identity, especially their age and gender, and often pose as children. The anonymous nature of cyberspace also allows them to lie about the age while they participate in chat rooms and simultaneously fake information on social networking sites, email accounts, etc. Thus, appealed by the spurious young persona, naive children end up having conversation with internet predators, which eventually ensues in their victimization. Again, in much contrast to offline grooming, in which the offenders are solely dependent on spatio-temporal dimensions like physical proximity to gain access to the victim and unsupervised time to manipulate the victim's emotions to internalize sexual abuse, cyberspace provides a borderless environment whereby the online groomers need not be physically proximate with the victim to sexually exploit them. Online groomers, unlike offline groomers, may groom the children all the time from school to home, sitting away from victim in distant locations without fear, thus rendering time and space meaningless. Hence, online grooming arguably results in victimization of children at a much faster pace as opposed to offline grooming, which undoubtedly remains a long drawn process because of the factors aforementioned. With respect to cultural shift in forming and nurturing friendship, it is quite palpable that lately young people have switched to social networks for developing meaningful connections with virtual friends. However, what's so interesting and barely surprising is their ability to communicate in a highly unreserved and confident manner with virtual friends when compared to their real counterparts. This evolving trend suggests that social networks fill the emptiness in one's life by creating a chimera of social connection and fellowship while still leaving them alone. As mentioned previously, children are often considered as naive, highly trusting of others, and in always need of affection. The combination of these characteristics make them an easy prey for online predators who lure them into sexualized chat through online forums like social networking sites, instant messengers, chat rooms, mobile phones, online gaming sites, bulletin boards, and webcams, etc. Therefore, online grooming involves dangerous consequences for the children with improper etiquette. In offline grooming, the sex offenders may typically befriend the victim in public, for example, park, playground, and schools, or in private, at street, outside one's home, at friend's house, and practically any place frequented by children. It is to be noted that online grooming, due to its intrafamilial feature, may essentially involve manipulating the protective adults within the child's family, the wider community, and those entrusted with childcare to gain access to child. However, on considering the risk-taking lifestyle of children, it is apparent that a section of young netizens frequently take a journey into cyberspace to communicate with their friends and expand their social network. In fact, they sign on various social networking sites and other chat applications with audio, video, images, and text sharing capabilities. Hence, the predators with sexual curiosity in children may always trawl internet for potential victims. In contrast to offline groomers who rely on opportunity and are highly situation oriented to groom the children, internet allows groomers to score through the profile of the internet victim and gain personal information about the victim. So this way around, online groomers are very particular about choosing the children and may rather select a victim who matches their erotic obsession. Here, erotic obsession is used in reference to the desire of the groomer for children of certain age and looks. In reference to the desire of the groomers for children of certain age and looks. For example, online groomer may directly target children and young people by means of online communications such as e-chats, sharing audio, videos, images, and text, which help them to groom and set up abusive situation. Also, in regard to trust generation, offenders in both online and offline grooming primarily gain trust and confidence of the victims by cementing an emotional connection with the victim. It is well established that cyberspace allows the offender to interact with the victim in a very clandestine manner. This forms a unique feature of online grooming in a sense that it conjures up the idea of maintaining the secrecy or privacy in interaction while sharing a virtual space, which may obscure the victim of the realities of risk and their state of victimhood. This way around, the online groomers seek to keep the children in victimized position to an abominable extent. Also, if we cannot overlook the fact that in technological era, internet is readily accessible through mobiles and especially computer, which are indeed conveniently placed in the bedrooms these days. Therefore, the interaction between them cannot be monitored or supervised, and moreover, it relegates the risk of parental supervision. Now, let's turn to patterns of victimization. Victim selection stage. It's the first stage. Online grooming unfolds as a process often occurring over several weeks or months. The initial stage of this process mainly involves targeting or selecting of potential victims and is generally characterized by a series of premeditated actions undertaken by the pedophiles in the following manner. At first, the pedophiles may register on a legitimate social networking site which is specifically aimed at young people's interests and activities. A growing number of studies suggest that social networking platforms such as Facebook, Friendsters, My Yearbook, Habbo, etc. offers a target-rich environment for the pedophiles to locate naive children for sexual purposes. These sites are increasingly popular among children as it allows them to play online games, post pictures, videos, blogs, and send emails and instant messages. Therefore, it appears that by signing up at such virtual forums, pedophiles gain relatively easy access to a pool of potential victims, which are often geographically dispersed. At second place, pedophiles may set up a fake profile to masquerade their real identities. As such, the process of designing a fake profile normally involves pedophiles giving false description about their personal information. For example, their personal profile may represent them as a child who is distinctively in his or her early teens or sometimes even younger. A large body of research on deception patterns typically employed by the pedophiles suggests that adults with sexual interest in children may collect the photographs of some attractive looking young person from the internet, perhaps someone whom they know, and publicly pose them as their profile picture. Similarly, the pedophiles might provocatively articulate their hobbies and interests, which may appear very charismatic or appealing to the children. Perhaps it seems reasonable to believe that pedophiles, by taking such deceptive measures, intend to promote the credibility that of a child among naive children who often lack maturity to distinguish between real and virtual world. Besides, it is worth noting that posing as a child also serves two main purposes for the pedophiles, viz. Pedophiles may conceal their true intentions, and two, it may generate a false sense of security into their young counterparts. Therefore, the anonymous nature of online grooming increasingly allows the pedophiles to attract potential child victims of equivalent age or opposite sex. Thirdly, the pedophile may browse through the personal profile of the child victims, which is often publicly available. This practice is the customary part of online grooming process and is essentially done in order to target the ones that most closely matches their predilections. It is well established that social networking platforms requires the users to mandatorily fill an online form that consists of information fields such as real name, age, locations, hobbies, interests, etc. To be sure, this ability to create a profile displaying one's sensitive information indirectly helps the pedophiles to obtain a clue of victims' physical appearance, age, etc. Therefore, by gaining access to such personal information, pedophiles may initiate contact with the intended child victims. Next, the pedophile may initiate the first digital contact with the victim. The conversation between the pedophile and the victim may start either through a mutual friend, or the pedophile at the first place may send a friend's request to the child victim. However, once the friend's request is sent, the victim almost always accepts the request, often thinking that they are befriending a teenager. Moving on to the friendship forming stage. This stage involves structuring a friendly relationship with the child victims. A substantial body of research on online child grooming indicates that pedophiles often forge friendly relations with the victims by means of developing familiarity with them. It affords them an opportunity to get to know the child. The time required in establishing a friendly connection with the child may vary from one pedophile to another, depending upon the level or frequency of contact pedophiles maintain with the child. At this point, the pedophiles may request the child to send their photographs if they possess any. But the requests for photographs in this stage are strictly related to pictures of child that are non-sexual in nature. And if the child responds to such requests in a positive manner, it serves as an indicator for the pedophiles to predict how malleable the child is in terms of their requirements. Hence, this stage, in a sense, affords the pedophiles to develop a familiarity with the child, which in many ways clear opens the route for pedophiles to infiltrate into victims' life. Review of recent studies suggests that pedophiles first find out everything about the child, perhaps through their account or description of the child's responses, and thereby use those responses to construct their identities. These identities in a way resemble exactly with what child liked or type of person they wished for. Example, pedophile may pretend to be younger than their true age, allege that they studied in the same school as the victim and had similar hobbies and interests, etc. Turning to the next stage, which is friendship into relationship. This stage involves generating trust in the formally developed relationship with the child. In the initial phase, the pedophile may engage in a normal conversation with the child on a regular basis. Whilst these conversations typically consist of discussions on general things, it is widely believed that the nature of such conversation is predominantly victim focused. For example, pedophile may engage with the child in discussing mutual interests, games, music, their day at school, or home life, etc. In similar breath, the pedophiles might also help the child regularly with the homework, listen to the problem with great interests, and provide them with emotional care. This way around, such conversations increasingly allow the pedophiles to enmesh centrally with the day-to-day life of the child while also influencing the child's emotion. Also notable is the response of child victims to such treatment. An exercise of literature review on online child sexual exploitation indicates that victims often feel loved and special on receiving the attention of pedophiles. In fact, it may lead them to believe that pedophiles are the prime givers of emotional support. For instance, troubled child may confide in the offenders about their personal problems, especially related to family, and may feel good by emotionally connecting with the pedophiles. That way, this equation of relationship may fool the eyes of the child by creating an illusion that pedophile is a confidant, and whilst also increasing the child's reliability on pedophile. Besides establishing friendly ties with the victims, this stage also signifies estimating risk involved in grooming process. In other words, pedophiles typically assess the likelihood of their activities being detected by child's parents, guardians, and other siblings. In order to circumvent the discovery of their activities, pedophiles usually ask the child about the location of the computer that the child is using and the number of other people who use the computer. Now let's move to exclusivity stage. During this stage, pedophiles typically embark upon a relation of exclusivity with the child victims. Here, exclusivity implies a part of conversation between child and the pedophiles that remains largely hidden from others. Even though secrecy in the relationship is often believed to be encouraged or insisted by the pedophiles, it is worth noting that child may also decide to keep the relationship a secret from parents, friends, and significant others. For example, in the former case, the pedophile may explicitly tell the victim not to tell anyone, particularly the parents, about the relationship. Whereas victim on the other hand may resort to activities such as lying about their whereabouts, deleting messages, deleting messages, saving conversation under different name, terminate the conversations if interrupted by the parents. From the above description, it appears that secrecy makes the child feel the relationship more exclusive, special, and exciting. However, they fail to realize their vulnerability, as limited communications of this information often isolates or draw the child away from the parents. Therefore, this stage exemplifies the ubiquity of secrecy in the relationship. Again, the means of achieving exclusivity in relationship is one of the vital elements of online grooming process that has assumed a paradigm shift due to the emergence of modern social networks. Literature on patterns of modern online grooming behavior firmly suggests that once a regular contact with the child victims is attained, the pedophiles may resort to conversations that characterizes a strong sense of mutuality. That is, a special relationship between the people that largely remains secret from the outside world. However, it is important to note that building a mutual relationship is a progressive step, whereby the pedophiles, after the formation of reasonable trust in the existing relationship, might persuade the victims to steer the relationship to a next level. In other words, pedophiles typically suggest the child victims to move from social networking sites, public forums, to private means of contact such as instant messaging, webcams, texting, phone calls, etc., which facilitates purely one-to-one conversation. Evidently, this progression in contact is the unique feature of grooming process, and rightly so. It enables the pedophiles to gain unlimited, unrestricted access to the child victims that are geographically dispersed, and allows them to manipulate the victim's emotions in a very intense manner, often by bringing a change in nature of the conversation. Notably, the penetration of the stage is so deep on the victims that they often get addicted to talk to pedophiles over phones, sometimes through nights, and even become amenable to exchange text messages to an absurd extent. The last stage is sexual stage. This stage can be introduced by asking questions such as, have you ever been kissed? Or do you ever touch yourself. Although the introduction of sexual stage might appear innocuous, the nature of these conversations may get intense, sometimes sometimes one that child may not have previously experienced in their life. Now this stage progresses through sexual stage. During this stage, a relational framework is orchestrated by the pedophile for the child to perceive the pedophile as a possible future lover or mentor. This equation in many ways helps the pedophile to break the child's resistance to inappropriate behavior. Connell describes that pedophiles are often very careful and gentle in their approach while introducing conversations of sexualized nature. This is so because it is important to maintain the child's perception of a sense of love and trust having created between child and the pedophile. However, anytime during this progression, if the child reveals that they are uncomfortable in some way, either due to awkwardness or pressure to reciprocate in similar tune, there is a profound expression of regret by the pedophile. It is also in this stage that the pedophile may explain the rationale of the relationship and clarify his intentions to the child. The rationale for intended activities may include, for example, forming long-lasting loving relationship or friendship. This rationale may or may not include an outline for the future activities. For example, maybe we can meet up sometime and I can show how much I love you. Maybe when we meet, we can have our secret game, that is oral sex. If I were there, I could have explained you the technique how to give the best orgasm. Or we can probably masturbate each other for an experiment, etc. No doubt such integration work magic for the pedophiles, and why not? On one hand, it affords them to lower the child's inhibition to sexual activities and get them to normalize this abusive behavior, while on the other hand, pedophiles are able to successfully position themselves as a mentor who will guide the child to a greater understanding of sex and their own sexuality. However, Connell 2003 argued that such guidance could be very harmful to young people and may pollute their minds beyond imagination. For instance, the pedophile may teach the child how to self-masturbate, distribute them porn materials, request the child to capture the image of their nude body, private parts, or to self-create a video showing the child in a compromising position. All these activities, Connell believed, make the child particularly vulnerable. Furthermore, the use of webcam and the video messaging capabilities of latest mobile phones also encourage the child to engage in such activities. In sum, the child becomes the producer and the distributor of child pornography, despite the fact the child was incited to initiate the processes of production and distribution. Turning to legislative measures, so far India has no specific law focusing on sexual grooming of children, though through internet. Cases of such nature generally fall under Section 67 of Protection under IT Act 2000. However, despite the absence of a concrete law, the victims of online sexual grooming can always seek protection and redressal under POCSO Act 2012. This act is considered to be very efficient because it also takes into account the possibilities for victim of online grooming to be or having sexually abused in the physical space, that is face to face. Thank you for listening to me patiently. I hope you found this lecture informative.